Welcome to Developing Roots in Community Real Estate, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of real estate development and its impact on communities that we live in. I'm your host, Jessica Washington, and this is my co-host, Ernest Williams. Thank you so much for joining us as we embark on another exciting journey that explores the intersection of bricks and mortar, people and places. And whether you're a seasoned developer, an aspiring urban planner, or just simply someone who cares about the places that they call home, this podcast is your window into the dynamic world of community transformation.
As we always say, real estate development is more than the erection of buildings. It's about designing neighborhoods and crafting communities and creating a legacy for the upcoming generation. We hope this next episode will offer inspiration and insight into the various facets of community development.
Before we get started and introduce our guest for today, just want to give a special thank you to our sponsor, Momentous Capital. This podcast is brought to you by the alumni of the diverse developers programs in the DC metro area. So thank you so much, Momentous Capital and Capital Impact Partners, for being our sponsors.
Thank you. And so now we will welcome Paul Blackman. Paul is the founder and managing principal of Trusted Advisory Group, a management consulting and advisory services firm focused on the construction and commercial real estate development industry. Prior to starting Trusted, Paul was appointed by Mayor Bowser in 2018 as Deputy Director of DC's Department of General Services. In this capacity, he led a 120-plus person real estate project construction management organization. He planned and managed the delivery of schools, office spaces, parks, healthcare facilities, industrial buildings, and multifamily residences. During his time, he managed over 400 completed and active projects with a value in excess of $4 billion. When not working on the business or client assignments, Paul mentors students completing the Real Estate Master's Degree program at Georgetown's University School of Continuing Studies as a capstone advisor. He is also a board member of Capital Bop, a nonprofit that promotes jazz musicians and jazz education, and a member of the DCCDC, an equity and inclusion nonprofit focused on uplifting entrepreneurs in Washington, D.C.'s Ward 8 neighborhood. Paul earned his master's in real estate from Georgetown University and bachelor's of science in electrical engineering from Morgan State. Welcome, Paul. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very humbled to be considered for this podcast. It's really an honor to be here.
We were super excited that you wanted to join us, so we were looking forward to this conversation. All right, let's start with something easy. Tell us about your first opportunity to work in real estate and how that opportunity came about.
So first, is per my bio, I studied electrical engineering in undergrad, and I thought I wanted to make cell phones, pay good money. Then when I got into the program, I realized I don't want to be in this industry. And so a friend of mine happened to be in construction that graduated a year before me, and he told me he was working in the construction space. So I pretty much abandoned all plans to do the work in my major, and I got a couple of offers. And so I started doing kind of outer edge commercial real estate through the general contracting business, working for Clark Construction.
It's kind of funny how that happens. I know I had gotten my undergrad in accounting, and then I quickly realized that I want to know parts of the CPA exam. So I had to chart my own course. But just wanted to know, what do you consider, or what are one of your more favorite or most impactful projects that you've worked on to date?
Impactful from a standpoint, and you said in the introduction of the podcast, commercial real estate development isn't all about erecting buildings, right? And so I feel like my career has gone from that kind of understanding how to set a foundation so you can erect a building and then fit it out and all of that from a physical standpoint. And then it evolved to managing those that do it. And then it evolved to creating the plan and negotiating the terms and so forth that go into creating things. And then you said legacy. And so for whatever reason, I kind of had my arms around the word legacy for a long time when I think about my professional career. And so the shorter answer of a long-winded response is when I was with the district, I was asked to negotiate the it's now Cedar Hill Medical Center development agreement. At the time, it was just a new hospital at St. E's, and it was a very protracted negotiation. But it's exciting to know that early 2025, because of the deal we negotiated that Mayor submitted to council and it was approved and written into law, there will be a new hospital in Ward A for the first time in like 40 years. There'll be a new hospital in the city. And so I think about the legacy of that, for many reasons, including one very personal today, where family members who live in Ward A, the surrounding neighborhood, don't have to go to the West End to get the same quality of care, right? And so people will have babies there, people will have, medical services rendered and things of that nature as a result of the efforts. And so to me, that's, I don't know that I'll ever top that, for the rest of my career. So I'm excited to see that opening, even though I'm not, physically with the district anymore, being in the city, having family in the community there and still doing projects in the community is extremely, I'm very honored to have been a part of that process.
Awesome. Yeah, your passion for doing this work definitely shines through. So want to ask you, maybe for somebody that may be considering the two different lanes, how has your experience been, managing construction projects, working with the DC government versus when you work with a private organization? How is that different?
So typically in private, it's going to be bottom line driven. You're doing this deal because there's an economic outcome that you're going to benefit from. And so a lot of your focus and your why is around how do I get the most juice out of the squeeze. And so you're economically driven, you're efficiency driven, you're, potentially amenities driven. You're looking for a certain type of user to be attracted to what it is you're putting together. In general, I mean, there's corporate real estate developers who are trying to do recruiting and retention. And so whatever that industry or that talent that they're looking for, that's going to drive it because that's what drives their bottom line. But it's all bottom line driven. When you're with the government, it's not so much at all about the efficiencies. It's about serving the common interest or the public good. And so typically when you're doing that, the economics obviously have to be considered, but you're not really looking at returns from a standpoint of financial. You're looking at, if I build this hospital, what does that do for the quality of the residents? And, all of the, I'm not going to speak out of school as a health professional, but these implications of health that folks talk about, right? Sure. And so that's the bottom line for the government in that particular model, or creating a recreation center because I'm trying to have somewhere for the youngsters to go besides being out in the streets, because that's creating a public safety issue, or it's creating an issue where kids are not using their talents and skills to contribute to the economy of people who have certain talents and skills that don't necessarily fit in the office. Maybe they want to be athletes and so they need a gym. They want to be a boxer or a basketball player, whatever, swimmer. So you look at the outcomes differently as to the vision of the project. And so, and then the process by which you go through to do those projects is completely different. How you get your financing versus appropriations and approval processes and stakeholder engagement. Public projects are always scrutinized by multiple different parties, whether it's community, city council, the executive branch leadership. whether it be deputy mayors or directors or things of that nature. Whereas private sector, maybe it's a real estate committee, and then how do I get the permit so I can build this thing after the bank gives me the money and I get the team on board. So it's a lot more streamlined, but also more narrowly focused on economic outcomes.
Very good. Okay, so years of experience on the public side and the private side. So what was your catalyst to start your own firm?
Time and chance. I think that is a recurring theme in my life as well as in my life. So professional falls into, your life falls in a bucket of personal and then professional, but my life in general kind of has this kind of theme of time and chance and so many different variables. And so I see the entrepreneurship more as time and chance. I've had instances of entrepreneurship, kind of side hustle, kind of all my life. When I was in college, I cut hair, believe it or not. I had a lot of people. I was in Baltimore. They didn't like the round necks. DC, you got to square it off. And so folks that couldn't go back to DC came to me. So I had a lot of clientele in college when I cut hair in college. And then just throughout the years, we had a campus, on campus. We had a store. We sold clothes there. We were one of the first groups that have an apparel company at Morgan State on campus. So I've always had something kind of entrepreneurial happen throughout my life. But when I started making engineering money, working for Clark, I'm like, this side hustle stuff, it's not really going to cut it. And so I kind of imagined that I would be fully corporate, my whole career. And then I had a family to support and things of that nature. And so it really wasn't in the cards in my mindset. But once I got through the pandemic and just kind of saw the world reset, and I was able to look back on my professional career, I didn't see a job that really fit me. And so for whatever reason, I wasn't like the big recruit that folks were throwing a bunch of offers at. Not a lot of headhunters were coming. And that was a blessing for me because it really made me figure out, like, what do I really want to do? I didn't have a lot of noise to distract me. I did get a couple of interesting phone calls, which led me to the entrepreneurship journey, but it was just that. Like, I got a couple of calls. I had been thinking through what I wanted to do next, and these calls kind of really made me move forward. And so one call was to kind of help a company expand their presence in the city. And then another call was about something I can't really talk about publicly, but it was a really significant opportunity that they needed my support on. And they said, we need you to be your own entity in order to participate moving forward, which that project never moved. So it's time and chance, right? Because that project never moved, but that was almost the main reason why I started my company. Like, so it's not a cliche. Literally was like, okay, well, this sounds great. And then it's like, but then at the same time, I got a lot of other opportunities which allow me to continue to forward.
So one of the services that you market with your firm is that you're an owner's rep. So for someone maybe outside of development that doesn't know what that is, can you talk about, just give us an overview what that means and what's the value that it brings to a project?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think if you ask 10 people, you'll probably get 6 different answers, right? It's almost like project manager. Like every industry has a project manager, right? And so even in our industry, there's several different layers of project management. And so owner's rep is the same way in a certain industries and certain levels of industry, where some people see owners reps as brokers, right? And so we're not brokers. We don't do transactional work. However, what we do is we represent the owner's interest as it pertains to overseeing the pre-development and development aspects that don't involve the transaction. So we work with brokers, we work with designers, we work with contractors, we work with furniture vendors, we work with technology vendors, we work with the utilities and permit. And so all of the pieces that go into the puzzle, we talk to banks. But we don't do the transaction. So we're not legal, we're not brokers, we're not bankers. But every other aspect of what happens if you decide that you want to do something with real property, and it requires some level of improvement, design, or something to that effect, we represent that entity that's implementing that work's interests in all of the aspects of a life cycle of a project, from initiation, planning, designing, oversight of construction. We don't build it. And then, making sure that the financials and the schedule and everything stay on track. And then, there's some politics that are involved, whether it be permit, whether it be kind of, working through community, stakeholder engagement, et cetera. So we kind of play in those spaces to a smaller degree in that, but to a full degree in all of the other aspects of a project life cycle.
I think that's especially valued, especially because there's a lot of nuances, definitely with working in DC, that if you're coming from outside or you don't have that experience, like, your services are extremely valuable.
And Jessica, I only partially answered your question too, because you did say, what's the value, right? And I think that's where it gets a little lost, even from some client's perspective, because you say, yeah, well, I'll oversee this and I'll oversee that aspect of the life cycle. It's like, well, I could just pay this person to do it. I don't need to pay for them to do it and you to oversee it. I'll oversee it as the owner. And so the value is, if you haven't been through it, you are going to pay to learn, versus paying for somebody who already understands and has gone through it and already knows what to anticipate before you get into a jam and how to avoid surprises. And so, most people who have been in this game long enough and have gotten burned will say, okay, you can pay for it now or you can pay a lot more later, right? And so that's really the value proposition, is that, between myself and my team, my colleagues, we've built almost every kind of project in the city, on every kind of scale. And so we've seen things, and the industry continues to evolve as well. So just because you did something 2 years ago that has the exact same requirements, 2 years ago, they weren't talking about net zero being a law, right? And so now, how do you navigate that? How do you navigate not having natural gas as an option, for your heat, and things of that nature? So I just wanted to address the value piece, because I think it's easy to kind of articulate these kind of abstract, oh yeah, we oversee this and we do that, but the real true value is in the experience and avoiding, or at least anticipating, if you run into challenges, how to most effectively get through it.
Very good. And so throughout your career, it is apparent about the level of value that you have provided to whatever stakeholders you've been working with. And in fact, you were recognized as a 40 under 40. You see the 40 under 40 award.
Made it by this.
So we would love to hear about that experience. What was that like? How did you get notified? And just
it was one of those kind of long shot things in my mind. I have been a subscriber to the Washington Business Journal for over a decade. So it's something that I've been reading forever. And so it was, I see the people that are in there and like kind of the stats, and I'm like, yeah, I believe what I did was fantastic, in my own microcosm, but, the Business Journal is looking at people that are, moving a lot of things. And so I figured, hey, let me throw my name in a hat. Somebody encouraged me to do it, who had already done it before and had been awarded. And I was like, you really think so? And so I did it. And when they told me I got it, it was crazy, because the timing of it, with me starting the firm, at the time I'm listed as working with Overland Pacific and Cutler, which is the group that I was helping to expand here in the city. Mm. But I had already started Trusted too, but I, applied using that company because there was some criteria that I wouldn't have made it as Trusted Advisory Group. So it was very humbling. It was exciting. It kind of validated that, making that leap of faith to start the business and like being given that honor and that notoriety for free was a real opportunity to kind of leverage, right? And so as soon as I got it, like they gave you like a signature, you could put 40 under 40 in your signature and all these other things. And so I was like, hey, Let's leverage this marketing.
Sure.
And then the other thing, again, going back to, I think this podcast is fantastic, and I just want to honor the vision of this podcast because it aligns a lot with me personally. And so the legacy piece, the most important part of all of it, I'm not a fan of like selling myself. I don't believe in that. I mean, to each his own. There's people that do it fantastically, and more power to them. That's just not how I'm wired. But the most important piece about the 40 under 40 was having my daughters observe that and know what that means, and know that they have the ability to do even more than anything I'll ever accomplish, right? And so I think, to me, while it made me feel good and, it being acknowledged in that way in a publication that I respect and I read every day or every week or whenever it comes out, being able to provide that experience for my children, I think was really the most important thing, because it was virtual. So It was during a pandemic. For the first time, I think, ever in the history of 40 under 40, they didn't have an in-person award. And I don't know that they would have been able to attend if it was at fill in the blank hotel ballroom, right, at after hours. So it was in our family room. My mom was there, my mother-in-law, my kids, so it was a really beautiful thing to be able to host dinner and then be a part of that, have them witness it and observe it, and to hear them over time when the new editions come out. They know what it is, and they look and say, "Dad, do you know what it is? New?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm getting a little old. I don't know these names," but that's probably it.
That's amazing. Really appreciate that story. So, what's some advice that you would give to somebody that's looking to come up and advance their career in real estate, especially here in the DMV area?
Study. To me, I'm an engineer, right, by education, and if you want to be great at something, you have to know everything about it. You can't really, especially in this game, because you're in DC, everybody wants to be here. In a lot of cases, especially in times of trouble in the rest of the world economically, DC is typically a safe haven because of federal government and other things that are happening with the military and the Pentagon and all of those types of things. And the district has a very robust budget as well as a local government. And so you have to be sharp because it's about creating value. This is one of the most sophisticated real estate markets in the world, on the planet. Like, the district as a government leads the world in so many different things. I think the mayor put something out on social media either today or yesterday that we lead the country, or maybe even the world, in office to residential conversions. And these are just, this is just from earlier this week. There's a long laundry list of things that the city does ahead of everybody. So if you are here trying to get into the real estate game here, you got to study. You got to know more, as much as possible. And you have to be hungry to stay up to speed on what's going on. Because the creation of value is how you maintain a presence in the marketplace. I've seen, people come in and, they're doing great, and then they're rinsing and repeating, and the market catches up, and then they're not able to sustain in the market. And so understand, the market, understand your niche. You can't do everything. Be true to yourself. Maintain integrity, because is global as this city is, it's really about this big from a network standpoint. So I tell, I mentor, folks and give advice because people did it for me, and I'm indebted to anybody who asks me. But one of the things I typically tell folks that ask me is, it's a small city. Whatever you do great, everybody knows. Whatever you do bad, everybody knows. So your reputation and your integrity and your character is always under a microscope. And so make sure that you keep it tight, because once you do that, it's tough to stay here and be successful. And then the other thing I would just say is, if you could do stuff here, besides maybe New York and a few other markets, even though I've gone to New York and I have a really interesting story about that. I won't bore you guys with that story, but if you understand the market here and you can grab onto the innovation and the things that we're doing, and you go to these other markets, most of them do not understand what we've been doing for 20 years here. So if you study this market, study your craft, stay ahead of the curve, build good relationships, and if you want to leave this market, you'll be ahead of a majority of other markets.
That is so true. Definitely, and it's definitely hit home what you were saying about it being a global type of place, but so big. So you have your own firm, constantly studying, staying ahead of the curve, providing value. All that being said, family man as well, right? But any interests outside of real estate, anything that I won't say a hobby per se, but what other types of things do you like to engage in?
I think I'm trying to truncate what I'm going to say here. I'm very passionate about like going back to the legacy piece, right? What's going on with the young folks in the city right now? Like I consider myself very lucky every day to wake up and be in this position that I'm in, right? And I know that it's by luck, time and chance, not because I had a pathway that I was set up for and all I had to do was walk down it. And so for the people like me who didn't have a pathway necessarily made out, I feel like I'm responsible to try to clear some of that. And so not necessarily from a real estate standpoint, but, just trying to create opportunities to be visible to the extent that I can, one, to my children, because that's my first responsibility as it pertains to the young people of the future, but then to the community, to the city, to the industry, right? So we mentor all of the people in our firm, have direct access to me and anybody who I know, if that could be helpful. And I'm the same way to anybody else in the industry who reaches out to me, to the extent that I can carve out the time. And I typically find at least an opportunity for one, virtual or in person. I'm into music. And so and now I'm getting old. I know I'm getting old now because I listen to jazz a lot more. And so the Capital Bop thing came about randomly, because they're a jazz music organization. I'm a big fan of go-go. I used to go to go-go's all the time, growing up, and even now to a degree, not as much. But I like go-go because if you go to a live performance, it got me into live performance music. So it really doesn't matter what genre it is. If it's live, I'm into it for the most part, right? Like, and there's music involved. Just because you're on a stage doesn't really, like, if you have talented musicians who are performing, like, to me, I'm all in it. So jazz to me is pure. It's almost like go-go because it's instrumentation. Mm-hmm. And I see a blend between, back in the day, Rare Essence, those guys were in the band, right? And they were real music. Not, real music, not necessarily like paid artists, but they knew music, they knew instruments. At St. Thomas More and all of that, right? And so we lost that, to me, in the community, to like put like true music and artistry back into like something that's cool and something that's fulfilling. And so I see that as an opportunity when I'm seeing or hearing about, 72 shots last night, and all of these things that are going on where kids are screaming for help, I understand and can relate to that. So I'm very passionate about that. That's an interest of mine.
Do you play an instrument?
I've dabbled.
Really?
Yeah, I've dabbled. Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. And I definitely, we've had our conversations about jazz and go-go, and I'm just at a point where I can't stay up late enough to some of my favorite bands, but I definitely see eye to eye with you on that.
All right. Lastly, how can people get in touch with you? Is there anything coming out soon from Trusted Advisory that you want to talk about or let us know?
I'll answer the first question first. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not big on the social media piece. As far as the industry stuff is concerned, I try to put out things that I think are relevant, that I like to share, that I think could be educational. I'm big on education. Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff we're doing is we're just trying to stay in the race and continue to build up something that's sustainable. We want to build a culture within our team, and we want to build a reputation in the marketplace that can be lined up with the best in any category. And so we just have this passion for excellence. So I think what you could expect from us is that we're going to keep our head down and we're going to keep doing what we know is the right thing to do. And hopefully we continue to build something that, 20 years from now, we can look back and say, yep, that was the plan, mission accomplished, So that's really where we're inward focused, and then we're focused on, what it is the assignment is and accomplishing the mission. As far as me, I am on the board of AREP, recently minted earlier this year, so I'm doing a lot more activity there. I think I'm going to try to line up the passion for younger people with my board role and influence to try to make sure we can create that next generation. So I'm big on just education, bringing the young folks up. Obviously I still have a long way to go myself in my mind. So I'm still trying to get better. And so the one thing that I recognize is I can't be like the old dog that's not trying to learn new tricks, right? So I got to make sure I know what the young folks are thinking about, younger, because I'm still young. Younger folks are thinking about, so that we can innovate. That's how you innovate.
That's right.
Right? And that's how you stay ahead of the curve. That's how you stay relevant in the marketplace, whatever you're doing, whether it's entertainment or, business or philanthropy or whatever it is. So that's it. I mean, I don't have any spoiler alerts, unfortunately. I can share today.
No, that's plenty. That's plenty. And y'all are well on your way to, you already are, one of the premier organizations, and the reputation, kind of precedes itself. So again, thank you so much for joining us. This was an amazing conversation. I'm going to wrap it up here. But thank you for tuning in to this episode of Developing Roots in Community Real Estate. I'm your host, Jessica Washington, my co-host, Ernest Williams. And thank you again to our guest today, Mr. Paul Blackman.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Take care.